But to go back to his priorities, Vaughan did that Friday press conference that Mark Carney gave, and in the first couple of sentences said, to deal with the U.S., to grow the economy, and people also want safer communities, and they want help with the cost of living, right? And housing being a big part of that. That right there tells me what the core priorities of his cabinet would be.
It's a conservative platform.
Well, yes. Well, we'll see.
Folks, welcome back to the channel. I hope you all had a great weekend. I'm filming this on the eve of Mark Carney deciding his new cabinet. However, you're going to be seeing it on the day of. And there's been some interesting claims that have come out in regards to who is staying and who is going, since reports are coming out telling us that Mark Carney wants to distance himself as much as possible from the Trudeau era, the Trudeau cabinet, and he's implementing 50% brand new faces to his cabinet. Now, I got a notification a few hours ago on my phone saying that one of these people that was out was Freeland. However, things have now shifted and it doesn't seem so, but take a look at this. Now, I'm going to be recording this because I don't know if CTV got some information that they feel like they weren't supposed to leak, but they accidentally did. But here on my phone, I got a notification. I'm not sure if you could see it, but it says Chrystia Freeland to be shuffled out of cabinet. Now, when I clicked the video when I was on the computer, it played for a second and then all of a sudden it disappeared. Now, if I tap it here, it says video unavailable. So again, not only did I get the notification on the phone, I still have the web page open where this short from CTV was posted. And as you can see here, it says Chrystia Freeland to be shuffled out of cabinet, sources say, and when you hover over it, it does play a small snippet of it. However, when you do click the video, just like on the phone, it brings you to this page. Video unavailable. This video is private. So I thought this was very strange that CTV would send out this notification, all this stuff, because when you look up the article, it actually does say this as well. Freeland out. More than half of Carney cabinet will be new faces, sources say. Now, this was 7 hours ago, and when you go into the article again, there has been an update here a few hours back after they had originally published it. And right down here, it says, while two sources initially told CTV News that longtime Minister Chrystia Freeland was on her way out, CTV News has since learned she is to remain in the cabinet and is expected to be in attendance at tomorrow's swearing-in ceremony. So that exciting, fun news to hear that Chrystia Freeland was officially going to be out of our hair, unfortunately is not the case, but I kind of figured she was going to stay because of her ties and her closeness to Mark Carney. Now, after the display of Mark Carney's cowardice the other day when Donald Trump was bashing her and just talking her down.
The USMCA is a good deal for everybody. I won't say this about Mark, but I didn't like his predecessor. I didn't like a person that worked for. She was terrible, actually. She was a terrible person. And she really hurt that deal very badly because she tried to take advantage of the deal and she didn't get away with it. You know who I'm talking about. But so, we had a bad relationship having to do with the fact that we disagreed with the way they viewed the deal, and we ended it. We ended that relationship pretty much.
It is kind of surprising that he is going to keep her when he knows how much Donald Trump doesn't like her, but maybe she'll just be put somewhere in the back office or in the shadows. Even though she's a cabinet minister, she might not have that much of an important role or actually be dealing with Donald Trump. However, some of the other people that they've announced that aren't going to be staying on is somebody like Jonathan Wilkinson. But they did mention that Stephen Guilbeault will most likely stick around too.
Carney has to deliver an aggressive agenda that differentiates himself from Justin Trudeau, while also building up his cabinet to take on Donald Trump. Plus, he's facing calls from regional leaders in Western Canada to be more friendly to their interests. That gives Carney an international diplomatic challenge and also a national unity one. His office says more than half of the faces will be new to his cabinet. Sources tell Radio-Canada Joelle Lightbound and Nathalie Provost are expected to join the ministerial team. Sources say Carney's expected to drop a lot of people that were in his first cabinet, like Jonathan Wilkinson, as he tries to remake the Liberals' image and focus on the economy. But sources say some familiar faces like Chrystia Freeland and Stephen Guilbeault will stay.
So they're keeping the most radical environmental guy, but getting rid of one of the other environmental guys, which I guess is something. But another thing that I found very interesting is David Cochrane on the CBC, because this guy has the Liberals in his pocket. This guy has so many times you see him on his phone, or he says, I was texting with an MP, or I just got this information from so-and-so and so-and-so. And never once during this report where they are talking about all the new cabinet members and the potential ones who are sticking around, does he mention Chrystia Freeland once?
And we're going to begin with the latest here in Ottawa, where Prime Minister Mark Carney will reveal his cabinet tomorrow morning at Rideau Hall. It's the team that will help Carney carry out his plans for the country. Louis Blouin is the Radio-Canada Parliamentary Bureau Chief, and he's here with me now. Louis, tight-lipped compared to some things we've seen in the past. We know a cabinet smaller than 30, but with a group of up to 10 secretaries of state who have sort of a junior cabinet rank, privy councillors who can go to meetings. What else do we know about what we're going to see tomorrow?
Yeah, so first he's creating those two groups. So the second group, the ministers or secretaries of state, will not be part of all cabinet meetings. So he's creating two categories there. I'm going to be watching gender parity. So is there gender parity in the core of ministers, or we count the ministers of state in the lot? I'm told big change coming tomorrow. It's going to be pretty sweeping. They want to even mark even more the cut with the Trudeau era, the Trudeau government. A lot of new faces, more than half of the new faces that will be at Rideau Hall tomorrow. Half of the fifth, at least half, will be new faces.
It's interesting, though, Louis, you go through it. We've got this list of 24, 25 ministers who were part of the initial Mark Carney cabinet after he won the leadership. I get to 7 or 8 names that I'm confident are still in cabinet. There's 15 or so, I don't know, and some of those I'm pretty confident are out of cabinet. Like, there is going to be a lot of familiar faces here in Ottawa, political names, maybe people have held reasonably senior cabinet posts. Okay, so that's where we are. We have a list of names and suspects and lots of rumors about who is out and some confirmations on who is out, but need a little bit more work.
And the fact that also nothing is kind of coming out, it tells you a lot about what kind of government I think Mark Carney wants to lead, like more discipline, more focus, and maybe that's something he gets from the private sector, or, you know, when he was at the Bank of Canada, when you prepare a speech, when you prepare a press conference, every word is important. You know, every word you use, and the information is kept secret until the last minute. Like, it could come from this background of his, that he wants something more tight for now.
Now, David Cochrane and his guests are talking about how they keep hearing all these rumors, but they can't actually confirm anything because everything is so tight-lipped. And the guest mentions, well, maybe this is Mark Carney running a more disciplined and focused government. Now, sure, he might want to keep it a little bit more hush-hush in regards to who he's going to be implementing until tomorrow or today when you're seeing this. However, to me, this doesn't indicate that it's a more disciplined and focused government. This guy strives to stay in the shadows. He does not want Canadians to know anything about what he's doing. He's proven it time and time again without being transparent. Right from the start with what his assets are, he just kept saying, oh, it's in a blind trust. If you don't remember, after he became Prime Minister, we could see these old screenshots of Justin Trudeau when he was there. He used to have his itineraries posted. Mark Carney, still to this day, this is a screenshot from back when he got in March. However, if you go to the actual page and you go under news, it is still not there. Mark Carney does not want to be transparent with Canadians whatsoever, and he will do everything in his power to keep it that way. So much so that even David Cochrane is confused that they don't even know who the core individuals are. That's how hush-hush everything is.
So, Louis, half of them new faces, this extra tier of secretaries of state, cabinet of under 30. One last thing. We still don't have clarity on the core staff. This is unusual that on the eve of a swearing in of a new cabinet, we don't have definitive names on who will be the permanent chief of staff. Marco Mendicino is not expected to stay there long term. Tom Pitfield is the principal secretary, but people don't know if that is going to be long term or if it's just a bit of a placeholder thing. I've heard a couple of names, but I can't get it absolutely locked down.
So my colleague Laurence Martin was told that Mr. Mendicino is trying to stay on. We'll see if it happens.
Now, I'm not really in the business of giving Mark Carney any sort of advice. However, if he is trying to distance himself from the Trudeau era, it'd probably be wise to get rid of Marco Mendicino as soon as possible. But as I said, we won't really find out the rest of his cabinet till later today. So in the meantime, I wanted to pivot quickly to the whole elections, votes, irregularities that's being reported recently. If you've been following along with the different ridings, you know the Terrebonne riding just flipped from Bloc Québécois to Liberal by 1 vote. However, this article just came out by the CBC saying that this woman's block ballot wasn't counted. She put in a mail-in ballot for the Bloc Québécois, and if it was counted properly, then they would be technically tied. Now, this falls under the irregularity because it wasn't her fault that her ballot wasn't counted. As you can see here, it says Elections Canada said that the return address printed on the elector's return envelope was incorrect, specifically part of the postal code. Now, there is a photo here of the postal code, and when you look up this address on Google Maps, that is the case. This should be J6W, which it starts off J6W, but then they wrote 4R9 when it should be 5S6. So in the article, she goes on to say, I wasn't the one who got Elections Canada address wrong on the envelope. Elections Canada glued this label onto my envelope. I had nothing to fill. I just had to put my vote in there. She says she mailed in her vote on April 5th and it was returned to her on May 2nd. So now that the vote or the riding has switched over, she probably decided to go look at her vote and she was thinking, this could have been the tying factor. My 1 vote could have been the thing that tied it. And guess what? She's not wrong. This actually is tying up that riding, which will probably send it back into a by-election. But now my question is, how many other people who did mail-in ballots had the wrong label on it and had their vote returned? Maybe the Conservative could have got a few more votes. Maybe the Bloc actually beat this Liberal by a lot more than just 1 to 2 votes. This has been a very weird election, and as we covered a while ago, I think it was last week, I was getting a lot of messages from you guys saying that it was happening to you too, where you went in to cast in your vote and your name was already crossed off, or many other people that you knew, same thing happening to them. And today I actually received this email, which I'll put up on the screen for you, where it said, latest update from Carleton riding. It goes on to say, hi Mike, I was just talking to a lady from a Carleton riding. Her and her niece know of 3 people who showed up to vote and their names were already crossed out in that riding. Sorry, but what are the odds? So low. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's that low because, as I mentioned, I was getting messages from people across the country saying the same thing, that they either knew somebody or it happened to them. The email goes on to say, if this is true, then I am now confident enough that the election fraud likely has occurred. As long as enough people don't show up, everything will be hidden. It's the perfect crime because no one will believe it and no one will be able to prove that their names were crossed out even if they showed up. Now, somebody actually messaged Elections Canada on Twitter about this, and they didn't really give that great of an answer. They've been posting this thing since May 7th saying, I heard that, some people say that, I saw someone write that. There's a lot of inaccurate information circulating about elections, for example, about non-citizens voting, ballot boxes not being secured, or pencils being used to change votes. And then they have this little graphic saying fact or fake. But this person posed the question. Many people have been saying they showed up to vote and were told they had already voted. Many people. How does that even happen at such a mass scale? And this is a question that I also had. So they write back saying, Elections Canada writes back saying, hi, the Canada Elections Act specifically prohibits people from willfully registering to vote in more than one polling location or in a polling location where they aren't eligible to vote. Not quite the question, but there are instances where administrative errors may occur. An independent audit is conducted at every election and by-election to make sure that the poll workers exercise their duties properly. Now, not trying to be rude, but their duties consist of taking your ID, probably taking your voter card, looking up your name, and then with a ruler going to your name and crossing it out. How they mess that up time and time again, if all of these claims are true, baffles me. But it goes on to say, activities at polling places are also carefully supervised, and procedures are observable by people at the poll, often including candidates, representatives, who can challenge any electors they believe to be ineligible. After the election, electors' lists and paperwork are reviewed. Any potential instance of double voting or multiple registrations may be referred to the Commissioner of Canada's elections, who investigate and enforce the act. Now, this person was not satisfied with that answer and said, I think we've established that your laws don't really matter. Have you ever prosecuted anyone for lying to vote as someone else, or lying that they were a citizen when they were not? I've never heard of anyone being arrested for this. That's a good question. As I said, I can't really throw out the word that I want to use in terms of the election because of the platform and all the stipulations they have about these certain things, but it is very suspicious that all these irregularities, as they're calling them, keep happening. Now, with all that being said, I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about this whole situation? What do you think about Mark Carney and his whole cabinet positions? Who do you think is going to be at the cream of the crop, the top one there? Do you think it's going to be Jolie, Dominic LeBlanc, Chrystia Freeland? What role do you think she's going to be in? As always, leave your comments in the comment section below. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.